Welcome to Before You Go, the official podcast of ABODE Contemplative Care for the Dying.
At ABODE, our vision is that we live in a world where death is not feared and we live fully until we die. And we'd like to make that happen before we go. I'm Mary Thorsby, ABODE's CEO.
I'm Natalie Buster, ABODE's end-of-life doula and yoga director. Welcome to Before You Go. Hi, Mary.
Hey, Natalie, how are you?
I'm good. Love having these conversations with you. What can I say? It's the highlight of my day.
Well, mine too.
Well, that's a relief.
So for today's contemplative moment, I came across this really wonderful quote. I saw it on the Death Wives Instagram account, and it's from Carl Jung. And he writes, "Know all the theories, master all the techniques, but as you touch a human soul, be just another human soul."
That is perfect.
Yeah, I love that. And that's definitely what we strive to do at ABODE Contemplative Care for the Dying. All of our end-of-life navigators, our volunteers, our doulas, ABODE doulas, all of our staff, we really take to heart to be a soul. Frank Ostaseski is a wonderful writer on end-of-life topics. He says, "Don't be a role, be a soul." So go in and care for people. It's not our role to take center stage. That's the role of the dying person. We're there to serve and support.
Oh, that's beautifully said. And I think it's really nice because each one of us has stuff in our lives, things that we bring with us. And I think it's nice to have that reminder of just slipping off all of our woes, all of our troubles, and just entering into the room of the person that we're serving or the house of the person that we're serving with that open heart. We're just there to serve. I mean, isn't that what people deserve at the end of life? I think so.
It's kind of the last chance for it.
Yeah. And I like that you said center stage because, as you know, I am an erstwhile actress and I am used to taking center stage, Miss Mary. So this is a good reminder.
Yeah, we're
Oh,
supporting players for sure.
we're supporting players, and this person that we're serving, this person at the end of life, gets to be in the spotlight. I like that a lot. Yeah. Well, Abode is such a special place. And I still remember, and I know I've talked about this in recent episodes. When I walked in, it was just this amazing feeling. Like we can describe Abode all we want, but it's another thing to walk in and actually feel that. And it makes me really happy that the people that we serve at the end of life also feel that energy. I wonder if we can chat a little bit about how people get to Abode. Like, how do they come in? How do we invite them in?
Well, a number of ways. The main underlying thread for all of our guests to come to ABODE, you must be under the care of a hospice agency. And San Antonio is blessed to have many, many hospices. You can just Google and come up with a long list. And they're all very, very good. We partner with every San Antonio hospice. So what generally will happen is a hospice will be caring for someone, usually at their own home or at a personal care home or a nursing home. As you may know, well, I know you know, Natalie, but our listeners may or may not know that in general, hospices are not a place. They may have been in the past, but these days, hospices don't have their own facility where they take care of their patients. They go to where you are. So if they have a hospice patient living at home by themselves, so that's one challenge. If you live by yourself and you're at end of life, it's really hard to get up and answer the door when you're bedbound. So you can't really live by yourself unless you have somebody living with you. So that's one type of person that we care for, someone who lives alone and just can't be alone any longer, or someone who has a significant other, a loved one, a partner of some sort, but maybe that person, that spouse, um, just can't provide adequate 24/7 care any longer. Maybe they're exhausted, maybe they're not physically able to or emotionally able to. Or maybe they come from a big family where there's lots of action and kids and dogs and cats and a lot of things going on. But as lovely as that can be, it doesn't really make for a conducive, peaceful atmosphere for someone to die. And then we have other sad cases where things are going on in the house that aren't particularly legal or what have you, all sorts of unfortunate circumstances. We also welcome folks who are homeless. We have a lot of housing challenged folks who are on hospice and they have absolutely nowhere to go anymore and they can't just live on the streets anymore. So we always want to look at bringing those folks in whenever we can to, that's a desperate case. We also take care of quite a few veterans. You would think that there would be a magical place for veterans. There is a VA type home, but the waiting list is very, very long. So those are the types of folks that hospice will recommend to us, or a hospital will contact us directly and say, we've got this person, they came to the ER, they're not on hospice, but clearly they have XYZ terminal diagnosis. They have nowhere to go. This particular hospice has agreed to take them if you, ABODE, have a room for them. So that's another way people come. And last but not least, some folks call us directly and say that they have a diagnosis, they want to come and see ABODE, or their family member or friend will call. So we take all of those calls and we ask them to submit a referral to us, and we go from there.
You brought up such an interesting point because before I came to work at ABODE, I had a different understanding of what hospice was. I really thought that it was a location, that it was a facility, that hospice had a home, and then they would provide the services there. And when my mom was in the hospital, she was general inpatient hospice. So it like blew my mind where hospice workers came to see her in the ICU unit. And we were able to get the care. We were able to get some options on funeral arrangements, different places that we could go. She wanted to be cremated, so they helped us find a place that was affordable for cremation. And it was nice to know that the hospice was able to meet us where we were. And so it's great that ABODE has this symbiosis with hospice, that we provide the home and the 24/7 care. And then hospice provides the comfort medications. For us, they provide the hospital bed, oxygen if that's needed, any of those medical props. If we were talking about theater a little bit ago, but any of those medical devices and needs, so that we then can provide the love and the home. And I think it's such a beautiful relationship that ABODE has with hospice.
It is, and the hospice teams themselves come to ABODE. They come along with the patient, and we then call the patient our guest. So the hospice nurse, the social worker, the CNA, the chaplain, they come to ABODE to visit with their patients, and they typically spend about an hour every day or two, or every couple of days. And we work hand in hand. We really partner with them to provide the care that they've outlined for our guest. And when we have issues or questions or concerns, we contact hospice immediately and together come up with whatever we need to ensure that each guest is comfortable and pain-free.
It's so wonderful because I know when I started working at ABODE as a navigator, and navigators are what we call the caregivers at ABODE, I was so grateful to have hospice on speed dial because I was new to this type of work. And of course, I wanted to get it right. I wanted to be perfect. I wanted to have all the right answers. And let me tell you, Mary, a few shifts, you lose that pretty quickly, and you just start to get into the flow. And because I had hospice, and we have some beautiful hospices here in San Antonio with the most amazing staff. We love the nurses, the social workers, chaplains, CNAs, everyone that comes through Abode. Each one of them is so skilled in what they do and can give navigators like me or the caregivers, family members, just a lot of peace of mind with all of the expertise that they bring. So it's a really great relationship between the two.
Yeah, it's a great team, each with particular skills and gifts that we can all bestow upon this person at end of life.
It takes a whole team. And how wonderful to, be at the end of life and you have this whole team working for you. You have the hospice workers who make sure that the correct comfort medications are administered, that everybody knows what's going on. They're kind of the quarterbacks in a way. And then you have the abode navigators, the volunteers, the doulas, the staff who just heap that love on the people who are there to die, our guests. And then we have family and friends who come to visit. And I know, like, when perhaps we have a guest who has a huge family, like you mentioned, that life comes into Abode, and there have been big celebrations out in our beautiful courtyard. People bring food and they use our dining room to meet as a family and just be with one another. And I think it's so nice that Abode offers that for the family, the friends, the guests, and for the hospice workers.
We're so thankful when families show up. Quite a few of our guests have absolutely no one in their lives. So when we receive a guest and in walks all these people who love and adore them, wow, we know that their final days are going to be filled with people who realize that their loved one is going to be dead soon, and this is their last opportunity to sit and be with them and soak up and give to them anything they can, whatever needs to be said, or whatever little things that their loved one may want. I really appreciate when people recognize that this is it. Yeah, and then for those, I think I've said before, for those who have no one, they've got us.
Oh, it reminds me of when I was a newbie navigator. One of the first guests that I had the honor of serving was named Dustin, and he was a 33-year-old individual. I think that he had been living in a group home, but he wasn't getting a lot of love or care. And I think he was suffering from multiple sclerosis, and he was kind of bound up in a tight knot. His body was very contracted, and he was in kind of a fetal position, just covering his body, and in this position of safety, trying to find his own safety in his body. He had made such an impression on the social worker who was working with him. She loved him like a brother. And once I met him, I understood why. He was 100% love. And it was so beautiful to see him. He had this big, beautiful shock of black hair. I mean, it was thick and luscious. And I remember just getting on my knees and going to his bedside and just putting my hands in his hair and just holding his head because everything else was tightly constricted. And it was just such a way to connect with him. And I felt him soften a little bit. And all I wanted to do for Dustin was to just give him care and just give him love. And so, as much time as I possibly could during my shift, I would be in his room. He really liked classic rock. So, we would put the radio on to a classic rock station and we'd rock out together. And I'd sing to him a little bit. It was just such a beautiful way to first meet someone that I may never meet in my regular life. I wouldn't meet Dustin in my normal everyday day-to-day existence. And here I got to touch the soul and have my soul be touched by him too. And he started to fade away. It took him a couple weeks, I would say, maybe 2 or 3 weeks. he started to fade away and he was less responsive, but whenever he could, he would always greet me with this big smile. I mean, it was a smile that could light up the room, and it just made my heart sing. And I think about him frequently because sometimes that's the kind of guest that we get to serve. He wasn't able to speak, he wasn't able to communicate with me except through that smile and eye contact and just that ever so subtle softness or relaxation when we were able to connect. So I'm just so grateful to have had that experience with him because he definitely made an imprint on my heart.
Imagine what he must have felt too to know, "Hey, here's that gal again coming to love on me in my final days." How nice is that, for he came from a place where he didn't receive that kind of attention, and at ABODE, he got it every single day. What a nice way to end your life knowing that somebody cares.
I know. And even if they can't communicate with us, we love on them as if they can. I mean, it's not contingent on, what we get back because even though he couldn't communicate with me, I'm telling you, I got so much back by just being in that room with him. And I know I'm not the only one. The other navigators all just really loved him and loved being in that room with him. He was a very gentle soul, and you could tell. Even when he was in pain or when he'd grimace a little bit or constrict, you still saw that softness and that purity of heart come through. And oh, what a teacher. He was such a teacher for me on just being present, not having to fix anything or do anything, but just love him.
Just be. So many of our guests are teachers. Well, in fact, I would say we learn a little something from everyone. Yeah, the opportunity to be with people at end of life is a real learning opportunity. It's a blessing. It's a gift, and it will change your life.
Oh, absolutely. I think Dustin might have been our youngest, one of the our younger guests that we've served.
Yes, he was 33, and before him, I think our youngest was 28. So we tend to get adults. I would certainly be open to welcoming younger people. It just so happens that the folks referred to us have all been adults from 28 years old all the way up to Miss Ruth. She used to tell us she was 100 and some. I thought that was just the cutest thing. 100 and some. So people come in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, of course, and all sorts of diagnoses. So any kind of cancer you can imagine, pancreatic cancer, breast cancer, colon cancer, ovarian, all the cancers, lung cancers. We see a lot of cirrhosis, which may or may not be alcohol related. But it is interesting that at the end of the year, I don't know why this is, we seem to get more cirrhosis patients. So I don't know, it's just something I've noticed. End stage kidney disease. So all of the things that happen to folks, we get, and then we also get some rare diagnoses too. Our guideline is that hospice needs to be very confident that the person is in their last 3 months, 3 weeks, 3 days of life. ABODE, we have 3 bedrooms, so we only care for 3 people at a time. So we're not a long-term nursing home or rehab or anything like that. We are simply a place where people at the very end of life can come and die. So it is important that hospice is confident that somebody will come to ABODE and die, within the 3 month time frame, so that we can care for more folks. If at 3 months our guest has not died, but it's clear that they are dying, that they are growing more frail and they're declining, we're happy to keep them. Every now and again, though, we have folks that because of the love and the nutrition and the medications and just the surroundings of ABODE, they get better.
We call it the abode effect.
The abode effect. And that's true in hospice as well. Often folks do get better with hospice care, and they live longer than they would have had they not been on hospice. When that happens at abode, the hospice agency finds accommodations that are better suited for somebody who has longer life expectancy, as well as folks who can go off hospice.
It doesn't happen to everybody, though, so we don't want to get people's hopes up necessarily, but it also is such a wonderful something that can happen. In fact, when you go into abode, there's a big rack of greeting cards, beautifully artistically made greeting cards by this woman artist, this woman in San Antonio, who I think her husband was a guest at abode.
Yes, Lila Walker. If you, I think she's lilawalker.com. She has these wonderfully funny greeting cards. And we took care of her husband, and he was one of those. He got better. He was not ready to die. So he eventually moved back home.
Yeah. And so I think she credits abode with saving his life. And it's like, well, we didn't really we didn't really do that, but thank you. Yes, it was an honor to serve him, and, to he wasn't ready yet. And as we've learned and what we've talked about in previous episodes, we don't know when death is coming. We may be ready, we may have done last rites and all those things, and death is like, nah, not today.
Today, not today. And we experienced that at abode too. But in general, the nurses can tell and the doctors can tell, yeah, it's going to be 2 months or what have you. So that's how we do that. If anybody would ever like to come and tour abode, Natalie, you've welcomed folks to do that. That's an open invitation to any listener to come and see abode. And if you'd like to refer someone to abode, on our website, under guests, we have a referral form, an online referral form that people can fill out. Usually the hospices do it.
Yeah, and abode is not the only place in the country that does this kind of work, right? We belong to a bigger kind of community, yeah?
Exactly. There's a wonderful organization called Omega Home Network. And it's like a trade association if you've worked out in the corporate world. But this is for end of life homes. And we belong to it. I would say there's maybe more than 100 members. So we're hoping to see more and more homes open that are supported by the community so that folks at end of life don't have to spend their very last dime on their end of life care.
It's one of those last dignities that we can give people, that opportunity to die with dignity no matter what income bracket you're in. And like you had mentioned, Mary, we do serve a lot of people who are chronically unhoused in San Antonio. And so, the reason is because we rely on grants and donations to do this work. We don't charge a penny to any of the people that we serve. And so it's unique, and there are wonderful personal care homes, and if you can afford it, those are great options too. But abode is just something special that is at no cost. We did see an opportunity with abode too, because you mentioned we have 3 rooms, and so we care for 3 guests at a time. And so almost as a stopgap in a way, we have started to deploy or dispatch one of our abode trained end of life doulas to serve people in their own homes in that contemplative way. We can't really offer around the clock service like we do at abode with our doula dispatch, but we can definitely bring that same contemplative love and support and education. And so we rolled that out at the beginning of this year, and it's going really well. We're starting to see that there's a real need for this kind of work. And I encourage all of our listeners, wherever you are, take a look at the doula scene in your neck of the woods. You can Google what doulas are around. A lot of doulas have their own websites, but in personal care homes or homes like abode, if there's not a place for them, if there's maybe a waiting list, a doula can really help. And we encourage people to do their research and find that in their own community.
Yes, I would say our abode doula program is very successful. It's one of the most innovative things that we've rolled out in a long time, to be able to train folks to be end-of-life doulas, and we've discussed that on another podcast, and then be able to match them up with folks who want to die at home and can die at home. Why not? So I think we've had about 15 successful engagements, so to speak, through our, we call it Abode at Home Doula Dispatch Service. And it's for folks who, they're at the end of life, but they don't want to die anywhere else. And perhaps their loved one just needs some extra help taking care of them. So we've got some lovely stories of abode doulas going to those homes and helping folks. And through a grant that we received last year, we're able to compensate doulas for their time, which I think is so important because it's so valuable.
Mary, I want, yeah, I was going to say, please share the story of Miss Chen. That's so great.
Oh gosh. We had taken care of a sweet woman, Miss Chen, for months, and it was closing in on the 3-month guideline, and she kind of leveled off. She wasn't declining. She just was, at a spot where, well, and her husband was willing and happy to take her home. And so he did, but he needed some help. And English was his second language. And there's not very many people here who speak Mandarin in what we do. And so we were able to dispatch an abode doula who speaks Mandarin. And she would go over to their apartment every day or two. And she would report back to us and to their hospice nurse on what was going on and how everything was falling into place and what they needed and where did they have enough medication. And the nurse continued to see Miss Chen, but she would go back to their apartment to see her. And then at some point, our abode doula said, "Hey, you know what? I think now's a good time to bring her back to abode," which we had committed to do. So sure enough, she came back and she died the next day. So we were able to give her back her exact same room. And by the way, we cared for 2 or 3 other people while she was back home. But the timing just worked out beautifully. She came right back to her room, found that same peacefulness that she remembered at abode. And her husband was able to just be. He didn't have to tend to her. We were able to do that for him in those last 24 hours so he could just sit with her and be with her. And it was just a beautiful use of an abode doula and a wonderful story.
Oh, I love that. And what I also love is that he was so grateful to Abode for providing this doula and for providing this room, that he invited you and me to a big dinner where we celebrated her life. We talked about, milestones in her life, and we got to share a meal with them at their favorite restaurant in San Antonio. And in a way, we were really welcomed into their family, their church community, and their culture. And that's so thrilling for me, Mary. Anytime that we get to meet people and get this glimpse into their lives through the people that we serve at Abode, it's just phenomenal. It just shows how big and beautiful this world can be and how much love there is. And we really felt it that day at that dinner, didn't we?
We did. It was a wonderfully inclusive, and it was a cultural experience. It was at a Chinese restaurant I had never been to, and it was just great.
Yeah, and delicious too. Well, Mary, I was thinking about my before I go statement. As you know, dear listener, after every episode or at the end of every episode, we do before you go and we kind of share what we do. And I saw that before I go also is big before I go big. So this is my big before I go. Before I go, I would like to show myself the same compassion that I show others. So treating myself the way that I've been able to treat our guests at Abode.
Oh, that's lovely, Natalie. Before I go, I will continue to be an ambassador for Abode. And whenever I'm meeting anyone, I want them to have a good feeling about what we do at ABODE so that if they should ever need our support in the future, they'll think, oh, yeah, I met that chick at ABODE and she was really nice. So sign me up.
Yeah, that would be good. Oh, always a pleasure, Mary. Thanks.
Oh, you too, Natalie. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Mwah. Thank you for joining us for today's episode of Before You Go, the official podcast of ABODE Contemplative Care for the Dying.
At ABODE, we believe that death is not a medical event. It's a very natural event. So therefore, we are not offering medical advice. We're simply sharing our experiences and knowledge with you before you go.
Make sure to visit us online at abodehome.org, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and while you're there, click that donate button to help us along. This podcast was edited by Make Your Day Richer.